we're the Open On-Demand team. We gonna spend the next hour and a half giving you a little bit of an overview of Open On-Demand. I recognize some people on here, so good to see some familiar faces, and there's others that I don't recognize. That's great. From the team here, obviously there's myself, Alan Chalker. I am the co-PI on the Open On-Demand project. Travis here will also be presenting. Travis, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm one of the maintainers of the Open On-Demand project, and I work at the Ohio Supercomputer Center.
Okay, thanks, Travis. And then he and I will be doing the majority of the talking, but at least in chat and help provide support, we've got a couple other folks that are on the team that I just want to call out. Chase Eister is responsible for a lot of our social media, and as you can see, he's dropped in some stuff there in the chat. Jeff, do you want to say hi?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jeff Ohrstrom. I'm another maintainer of the Open On-Demand project.
Okay. And then Bob, do you want to say hi?
Sure. This is Bob Settlage. I'm at Virginia Tech, and I'm on the grant as the engagement person.
And did I see Ayush on here? Maybe.
Yep.
I'll put him on the spot. Do you want to say hi or not? Okay, maybe not, or he's muted. Okay, there you go. He put it in the chat. Thanks, Ayush. Okay, so Travis, Jeff, Bob, and Ayush will be in person next week at the conference. We are, I think, I recall, a platinum sponsor, Open On-Demand platinum sponsor, Gateways, and we'll have a little table there. So happy to chat with any of you that might be there. And for those of you that aren't, we'll give you some ways to contact us. So Travis, do you mind sharing and starting the slides? Okay, great. Thanks so much. So the other member of our team who is not here today is Gerald Byrket, but he's available as well offline to talk if need be. So next slide, please. Okay, so the agenda today is first I'm going to talk just a little bit about the goals of the tutorial, and I'll give a bit of an intro to Open On-Demand in case some of you aren't really very familiar with Open On-Demand overall. And then Travis is going to get into doing some of the Docker container installation, dashboard customization, and some example interactive app. And then I think I'll do the final quick wrap up. Next slide, please. So what do we want to do today? Well, we do want to provide an overview of Open On-Demand for those of you who might not be aware of it. And we're going to show you how to set up a cluster and a container to practice. Now, because of the way this is remote and limited time, we're not going to be able to have you necessarily follow along live on this and help you debug stuff. If you want to try to do that, fine, but we can't guarantee that we're going to be able to pause and wait for everybody to catch up. But again, this is being recorded, it's going to be posted. We'll make sure the slides are available, and we're available offline then afterwards to help you with that. And so we'll demonstrate some features of interest, we think, to the Gateways community. We're not going to cover everything with Open On-Demand, but we're going to focus on some things we think that Gateways folks might be interested in, and then provide you some resources to follow up for questions and help on this. So next slide, please. And next one, yeah, intro. Okay, so what the heck is Open On-Demand? So for those of you who might be a little bit familiar with Open On-Demand, in case you didn't catch it, we deployed a brand new website earlier this week and has some new information on it. And that's kind of reflected in this slide. So Open On-Demand, we like to now say we're connecting computing power with powerful minds, and it really empowers people with remote web access. That's what the bottom line comes down to, is remote web access. There's kind of two categories of folks that potentially might be interested in Open OnDemand. There are those who just want to use Open OnDemand. If you want to access your organization's computers through the web, anywhere from any device, and kind of the appealing thing for that category of person is the fact that this can be done with zero installation, literally any browser. It's doesn't require install any device. We've got video of me connecting to the OSC on-demand instance from my Tesla in-car browser. That's literally kind of how extreme. We've seen pictures of grad students sitting in a bar with a pint of beer in one hand and their smartphone logged into on-demand in the others. Now, at least here in Ohio, it's not against the law to drink and compute, but we don't necessarily condone drinking and computing. So, but really anywhere, any device, very easy interface to use. Now, if you're kind of on the flip side of that, and you might be a system administrator or run some sort of computing facility, the reason you'd be interested in it is because it really helps administer that remote access, which will result in different utilization, transform the way your clients can work and learn on your system. So low barrier to entry, people can get time to science and much faster. It's free, it's open source, it's flexible, configurable. We'll show all that. I do see a question here. Are you going to are we going to provide the recording? Yeah, this is being recorded, and Sandra is going to post it at some point. I don't know when she'll get it up, but she absolutely will. Jose, does that answer your question? I assume so. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So to give you an idea of the community, we know there's almost 400 active installations of on-demand all over the world. This is based upon geolocated IP addresses from our RPM server. And we don't necessarily know all of the locations, all of the organizations associated with those locations, but we know many of them. So if you go to the next slide, we have here and on the website logos of organizations that have identified to us. If you do not see your logo on there and you haven't told me in the past month or so directly that your logo is missing, please reach out to us, let us know. And we really want to add your logo to this because the NSF funds us, and part of the way that we can show our impact and the results of that NSF funding and support is by showing the breadth of the community. If you look at these logos, you'll notice that it's not just academic institutions and not just US academic institutions. It's international academic institutions, it's commercial companies, it's federal agencies. It spans the gamut on here. So we're really happy, excited about the community and constantly want to expand it. Next slide, please. So this is the only real kind of technical architecture slide I'm going to cover. We do have much more information in our documentation, but what is it that's special? What is the secret sauce of Open OnDemand? Well, it's kind of illustrated here in this diagram. So on the left-hand side, you have obviously clients. So we already talked about any modern web browser, pretty much any client. And what they're doing is they're connecting over HTTPS and WebSockets to a very lightweight server front end that's running as Apache user. Majority of locations install this lightweight front end on a virtual machine, but you don't have to. You can install on bare metal. But basically, the way to think about it is it's like a login node, and it needs to have kind of the same configuration and security as a login node on whatever your computing system is. And all it's doing is it's interfacing with your existing user authentication. We support plugs and tie-ins into almost any authentication package out there, including various two-factor authentications and all the very standards, LDAP, Active Directory, all that. But we plug into your existing user authentication, and then once you authenticate, that front end is just acting as a reverse proxy. When you authenticate, what's really happening on the back end is there is an entire web stack using what we call per user Nginx that is being launched as your user. And this is the real secret sauce, the security aspect of this, in that literally, other than that initial kind of user authentication reverse proxy function, everything that is done is being run as your user ID, which means that we rely upon all of the existing group permissions and file system permissions and every underlying security that's just inherent in whatever the underlying Linux operating system that you have configured. And it really helps facilitate the ability to kind of customize and control access, as well as make sure people aren't stepping on each other's toes with configuration, stuff like that. So that's the kind of the high level architecture and the secret sauce here. Okay, I think that there's maybe one more slide. Yeah, so just a standard call out here that if you want to understand a little bit more about the project, we've got a link in here, GitHub. You can also always go to openondemand.org, and we link to the GitHub from our website. And we do use GitHub issues to kind of track and show features that we're going to be releasing. But we want people to open feature requests, put in tickets. We want to hear from you. So definitely reach out to us. We'll come back at the end. I'll explain some of the other channels and ways to reach out to us. But we absolutely want to include the community in our efforts. This is a community thing. I think that's the last slide that I've got, Travis. Let's double check. If you can go next one. Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Turn it over to you.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go through a tutorial that we typically give to kind of show you some of the functionality of on-demand. And that's going to be around customizing the dashboard itself and how to work on the dashboard within on-demand, which is a pretty neat feature. And then we'll finish up by looking at developing a Jupyter app to deploy on on-demand. And so the way this is going to work is these are the instructions, but really what's going to happen, I'm going to have to exit out of these slides so that I can kind of follow along the tutorial as well. But you're going to want to go to this site for the tutorial tool set if you want to follow along in GitHub. And once you're there, there's a README to kind of show you how to clone this all down and start this up. But I'm going to exit out of here to then share in the chat this link so you can kind of easily get to it instead of this slide. Give me one moment. And there we go. Are you all seeing?
Yes, we are.
Okay, cool. So what we want to do is do the getting started page. So I'm going to post this here in the chat if you'd like to follow along and hit this page. And you kind of basically have this overview of what we're doing and how all this is being done. And to kind of quickly move past this, there's a bunch of images and a Docker Compose file and Docker file that's going to put all this together for you. But the big thing is, once you're here and you've cloned the repository down and you've gone into where you've made that directory, to run the start command. And this is going to take a few minutes if you haven't done this yet. I've already done this, so it's going to be pretty quick, but it could take a few minutes, and I want to give everybody time to actually have that happen and build correctly. So Alan, I don't know if you want to talk some more, because this does take a few minutes for some people to actually build.
Well, did you want to, there's another slide where you kind of explain some of the stuff. I don't know if you wanted to. kind of go
Sure.
screen, but if you want to kind of just talk to that slide, what
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind
Let
of
me stop this for a moment.
tangential.
And yeah, so we kind of, what have I looked at? There we go. As you saw, this page kind of covered that, the first thing you're seeing to get started. So while everybody's kind of building their containers, these pages are the ones you're really going to want to use while you're there, which I kind of have called out on my own browsers as well. But one of them is going to give you the passwords and the usernames you're going to need for later on. And so what we're doing is customizing the user dashboard. And so what we're going to be doing is showing you some 2.0 features. And these are basically pinned apps and kind of changing that layout along with adding a widget there. And we're going to do some simple stuff like show you how to start development mode to do the development and also change the navigation bar, which is pretty straightforward stuff. And this is kind of a final view of what you're going to see, or at least one of the views. It'll even be more, there'll be more to it in the end of this. And again, I'm sort of trying to give everybody time to build those because they do take a few minutes. And so this is to kind of show you where we're going after this is all done. So eventually this is what you'll see. So you'll actually have these pinned apps. You'll have changed the layout where these things will switch sides, and you'll be adding a widget with your own custom text in there, and we'll change that to gateways instead of perk, just to kind of give you a sense of how to do that. And that will be sort of the end of that, and we'll move on to Jupyter from there. So I'm going to go back to kind of the start here of where we were.
Travis, the other thing that maybe if you can go back to the container diagram, I think let's give some context and explain
Sure.
cold front, XD mods, and these other things, because we're not going to cover them today, but why they're there.
Yeah. So there are other things in this container or in this orchestration that are happening. And what Alan's talking about is XD mod, which actually it's an external application that collects usage statistics, basically of applications within or jobs within OnDemand. And then the other part of this that you're not seeing is sort of some of the authentication that's set up. That's sort of in the background, so you don't have to worry about it at the moment. Freezing LDAP. And Alan, can you talk to Cold Front more? It's not one I've had a lot of interaction with.
Yeah, Cold Front is just an open source kind of allocations, user management thing. So if you're assigning users to groups and giving them access to a certain number of resources and accounting for that and things like that, that's what Cold Front does.
Yeah. So
It's
all
kind
of
a
that
self-service portal to allow PIs to administer themselves.
And so you get all of that actually in this orchestration that we've set up here. But the main thing we're kind of playing around with, and a lot of the other things you kind of see in the back are really this on-demand front end, and then working with submitting jobs and kind of seeing how to get that to work correctly for the Jupyter app eventually. And the start of that is to kind of customize this front end. We'll show you how to do that, and then the job submissions later. But I think at this point,
I think you've given everybody enough time to
Yeah.
walk through.
Exit out of here. Okay. So at this point, we've kind of got everything running, hopefully. And if you don't, there are commands to fix this that I want to point out. The big thing I want to point out is that destroy is the first thing you should try, not cleanup. Cleanup will do a complete wipe and rebuild, whereas destroy is a bit less intense. So these are two commands to try if things aren't running for you initially. But the next thing to do is kind of do the accessing applications, which I've got already here. And this is important because it's going to give us that link, but also the users that we want to use. And the password is going to be I love Linux. Kind of easy. And I always use the HPC admin user. So now we're going to open up and
I
log
don't
in.
think we're seeing the right window, Travis.
Oh, what are you seeing?
So we see the tutorial walkthrough slide, and then we see untitled document 1 tutorial scratch.
That is not that. That's not my screen that I'm showing here. Sorry about that. What about this one?
There we go.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that. Yeah, so what I did was at the bottom of the getting started page, clicking the accessing applications. And then from within here, these are those user accounts and passwords. So the I love Linux, and I always just use HPC admin. So then we go down and we want to go to on demand. So we click that to log in. And again, we're going to use those credentials that we saw. And we're logged in. Okay. So this is our system dashboard right now. And what we want to do is show off like how to replicate this dashboard you're seeing for the system within itself as a development dashboard to do some work on. And we're going to change this color on the nav bar initially to kind of do that. And it's pretty easy. We just do environment variables to kind of do some of this. And the very first thing I want to have people do to do any of this is actually log into the shell through the web. So we've got this shell over here that we ran, but really that's kind of done. So let's put that over there. And so once you're on this and you're in the shell, you need to actually SSH into on-demand before you run any of the commands that we're going to be doing. And at this point, we're actually going to start on the on-demand tutorial. And I want to show you how to get to that. So this was that accessing applications. And if you go back to the getting started page, oh, I thought there was a, let me go to the docs. No luck. Thought there was a, where did it go? Well, in any case, I'll post it in the chat. How to get there quickly. Otherwise, you have to navigate through some pages. You could also just keep clicking next on each bottom until you get to it, but that link will take you there quickly. All right, so we've just logged in. So we've completed that. And now we're going to get a shell. And we're using the shell app for that from the dashboard. We've got that over here. And kind of see where we're at. And what we're going to want to do is grab the actual on-demand code from GitHub. And we're going to clone it into a directory that we're going to call on-demand source full. So we're just sitting here, we've logged in on the shell, we copy that in, and we clone. And this will take a moment. All right, then we're going to make a directory for on-demand development. So on-demand dev. Okay, change into that. And then we want to create a symlink between the code that we've got, specifically the dashboard, and a development dashboard that we're setting up. Okay. Now change into that dashboard. And then we want to check out release 2.0, because again, we're checking out features that are on 2.0. Okay. Now we need to set some things up for Bundler, just so it knows where everything's at. And that's to ensure that all our gems are sort of local to this app. And now we run the bin setup. And again, this also can take a couple minutes because you're pulling in a bunch of gems. So this will run. And I did want to point out, if anybody's a Mac user, I should have said this first, please, if you're an M1 Mac user, run these commands before you do the bin setup. Sorry, I meant to call that out. I always forget about that. I should set that first. But again, this will take a minute. As you can see, it's kind of grabbing all the gems for us. And we're going to get a full replication of the dashboard that we're in, but we're going to be able to start kind of changing colors and sort of how things look. And it's kind of one of the cool things about on-demand, that you can develop on-demand within on-demand. That's pretty neat that you can do that, that it has that ability. And it makes development kind of quick for it as well. So this is going to take a few, and the big thing to notice is just sort of the next step. And this is where we're going to start to get into these environment variables I was talking about. So we're going to do the first thing by staying in this dashboard development that we've set up and just creating a local environment file and setting some environment variables there. And just kind of showing off what starts to happen when we do that. And I guess I could speak to a little bit about the next steps once this is complete. One thing to notice is that, we kind of talk about this here, we're going to use environment variables to actually override the configuration directory. And so within our development dashboard, it's going to have a development configuration directory that it looks for all of its configurations, because it defaults to etc ood config. But that would involve privilege escalation, which for development, we don't want to bother with. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to create this directory And then we're going to use an environment variable to tell OnDemand, oh yeah, that's actually where my config sit. So not on the system, but sort of in this directory here. And so then we'll see that our development dashboard begins to get its own configurations through this method. Builds a lot slower in a tutorial, it seems like. Okay, here we go. Coming up at the end. All right, so that's all done. Dashboard, okay. And so, like I said, we need to kind of create a directory to fake out OnDemand on where its dashboard configs are going to sit for this development dashboard. So we're going to make that OnDemand config ondemand.d directory. Where am I? What am I doing? Oh, whoops. Yeah. I need a flag. There we go. And then we need to touch a file there for now that we're going to be using shortly. And it's this OnDemand YAML. And then we're going to go back into that dev dashboard. And we're going to edit our and we're going to edit, yeah. The ood config directory. So now we're telling OnDemand to go to the configuration directory we just constructed. Okay. And then we're going to go edit some files. So we made that ondemand.yaml. We've been in this shell, but the shell's a little bit, I don't know, unfriendly in a way to see what's happening. So what I want to do is show off the file app to do the work that we want to do on these YAMLs. Okay, so we've got this, now we kind of see everything we have here. Let's go into our OnDemand. Let's go into our config. Let's go into our ondemand.d, and let's actually edit this file. And what we want to do is just add this YAML configuration here. We're going to save that. And then if you go back into your dashboard, oh, I missed a step, didn't I? I'm sorry about that. Oops. Hold on one second. I apologize. I missed something. So first, we need to actually activate this. So I apologize for that. Go into the sandbox here. And actually, we need to initialize this thing. So we're going to actually click that and say yes. Okay. And then I do want to do one thing that I kind of forgot. And each time we restart the pun, so when I did the initialize, it restarted the pun to pick up those configurations that I'd set up. And now each time I do that, your shell is going to close out. Okay. So just be aware of that. And there's one thing, if you look at these two dashboards right now. So that's the system one, and you can see that in the URL. And then this is the dev dashboard. You can see that in the URL. But you can easily confuse these two. They look a little similar in color. So let's actually very quickly give ourselves a way to differentiate. We'll SSH back into OnDemand. And then actually go into that OnDemand dev that we've set up for the dashboard. And in that .env that we've got here, which is why it looked weird to me, we actually want to change the color. And so now if you restart, there's nothing happens. But if you restart the pun, now you've got a blue navbar. And we did that just using that environment variable and setting that here. And so now I can see a difference between I don't have to look at a URL or look at a structural difference. There's a very clear color call out to let me know, hey, I'm in my development dashboard. So that's definitely something I would advise if you're doing this. So anyway, let's move back down here with the pinned apps. And I again apologize for having to move around like that, but we've already got this running. So we've done a little bit of configuration here. We kind of see what's happening. And now I want to show you something else with these pinned apps. So I'm going to go back into here and I want to edit that YAML, that ondemand.yaml file we have. So I'm going to go into my files app. We're going to go back into our on-demand configs. And we're going to edit this on-demand YAML. And we've got these pinned apps from the system, but now let's also categorize them. And we're going to do pinned apps group by category. And we will talk shortly about where that is coming from, this category, but essentially the apps have a manifest file, and that is where this is coming from. And if you save this and then go back and refresh, nothing, right? But remember, it's a config, so we got to restart. And now we've got the apps basically categorized by by the categories. So if you were going to these apps manifest files, you would see that they would have these set as like interactive apps, jobs, clusters, files, and OnDemand knows how to pick that up and place them like this for us. So this is great because now a user doesn't have to, a lot of sites can kind of set this up so that users can log in and quickly say, well, I want to do Jupyter. And it's that simple, instead of having to go into like the interactive apps and click around or kind of go through this page of interactive apps, which can have quite a bit more happening on different sites. So it's just less clicks for the user, and that's something they really like. But we can kind of do more than with this. We can actually start to play with the layout, and we can give people messages of the day for any kind of maintenance that's happening on the servers, or just things they need to know, which is kind of the next two things we're going to be doing. So now that we've got this nice little layout, let's go back into our Files app. And we want to work in that on-demand YAML again. We're going to edit this. And within here, what we're going to do is add this. And we're going to save it. Okay. And as usual, because it's for the system, we need to do this restart. And things have changed, but we're missing a little something. And again, it's because I stupidly forgot to do my .env again. And so I need to go in and set some environment variables. Okay, so I need to say for my dev dashboard, I want to set the message of the day path to Etsy message of the day. And I want to set that format for what it finds there to Markdown. So again, I'm going to need a new shell because I've restarted. And I'm going to need to SSH back into on-demand. Oops. And then I'm going to go into my dev dashboard again. And I could have done this through the Files app. I just, for some reason, whenever I do the local stuff, I always use Vim. I don't know why. Cool. So now let's restart our web server. Or restart our pun, sorry, not the web server. And now we've fed these environment variables in, and so it can actually see what we've given it. And now we've got a message of the day that's being displayed along with our pinned apps. So this gives us a nice little bit of customization of how we want this screen to look. But we can even do more than that. So let's see here. We're going to add a widget, and we're going to put a little message in that widget. And the way we're going to do that is basically tell on-demand to load an external config and kind of give that config's location. So, and this is because of kind of what you see here. Again, a lot of what on-demand wants to do is in this Etsy UD config, and we're working in a development app. So it's like we don't want to really be going in there, right? We want to load our own configs up and have them take place in this development dashboard. So that's the motivation here. So let's go back into this, which again, because of the restart is gone. And so we're just going to grab these environment variables. We're going to paste them in there. And then we need to make some directories, and we're going to make a partial. And this is a Rails thing that I kind of want to point out when we get to it. And so what we want to do is we want to make this for our widget. And then we're going to touch a file. And as it's kind of called out in the tutorial, it's a Rails convention for partials. So yes, that underscore is supposed to be there. We're sort of inserting that into the page as a partial to say, display this. Now that we've made that though, we can sort of come out of the shell and we can kind of go in and start to work on this in the files app again. So let's go back into our config directory here. Let's go to the views we just made for the widgets and let's edit this. Hello world. And just grab what you see here and paste it in, but let's change that to gateways 2022 and make sure and save that. Now we need to sort of arrange things so that this fits correctly with everything else we've called out. So we need to go back into that on-demand YAML, which is what I'm in there, which was in the config directories. And we're going to add a new column. Okay. Notice that these total up to 12. So that's sort of the idea here. Sure, that looks correct. Okay. Yeah, there is some trickiness of kind of making sure these columns stay the same. But anyway, if you then come back to your development dashboard, and you do a reload, we've got nothing. But if we restart the pun, we now have a widget placed here, and it's taking up, again, those 12 columns so that it's evenly placed with these two. And that basically covers everything about customizing, doing some simple customization of the dashboard and kind of just giving you a little bit of, these are the things you can quickly do with on-demand using environment variables and some things we've set up to just change what the initial dashboard even looks like. So now I want to move into covering the Jupyter app. And if it is okay, I'd like to take a few minute break if that's all right with everybody. Alan, is that okay with you?
Oh yeah, I think that's good. In fact, let's see if, I don't know if Jeff, you're able to talk to this, what's going on in chat about the Docker versions. So I remember there being some conversation about this before.
No, not exactly. I mean, I know that we use a fairly high version of Docker Compose, but I don't know if there's any Docker version requirement.
Okay, well, Ayush is saying that we can't do 20 plus. I'm a little confused by the difference between 20 plus and 20.xx plus.
Well, it looks like the Docker Compose requirement does have a Docker version, so. Yeah, Travis, can you give us the versions of Docker that you've got right now?
Yeah.
Well, maybe the same thing for Jeff, you, and Ayush, because maybe you all have different versions, but you all are able to run this. Okay. So, yeah, clearly, your original question was, does it work with 20.10.0 plus? I assume 0 plus includes 18. unless you were trying to annotate that differently. Okay. And then Ayush, I still don't quite understand what your correction was there.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I'll be back in 1 minute now. I need to stop. 1 moment.
Yeah, all good, all good. Okay, so you should saying Docker engine does not support Docker Compose version 3.9. That's a big jump, 3.9 compared to 1.27 that Travis has. I don't know, Jeff, or you, what version of Docker Compose? That's a huge jump. Ahmed, is this helping at all? I might be just causing further confusion.
Sorry, yeah, no, this is up. I'm just trying to make it work on my end, but it's not. But this is not the point. Maybe to debug from your end. So I'll try working on my end to see if I can make it work. I was having issues with 20.10.3 and Docker Compose version 1.25. So that's why I was asking if it works or not. But maybe it's something on my end.
Okay.
Well, I know for sure if there's a compatibility issue, it's likely with Compose.
Okay. Yeah, Compose on the website, they say that it only supports the version 3.8, and that's what they have on the website. But I don't know what that really translates into. But the Docker Compose.yaml file you had was 3.9 in the toolset. So, and it immediately complained when I tried to start it. So I was going to find a way around it. So that's what I was asking.
Okay.
I can add more details later. I don't want to delay the things here.
No, that's this is a good kind of a little bit intermission for us to understand, because we've been doing some version of this tutorial for 2 years now, and there's always interesting little things that crop up. So helping us to understand the kind of requirements and the permutations is a good thing.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep. Hey, we can hear you, Ayush.
Yeah, so the issue is like it's not just with our repository, but it's like everywhere. So the latest Docker engine itself does not support Docker Compose for YAMLs written in version 3.9. So people would have to like downgrade the Docker engine itself to work with existing Docker Compose YAMLs. So that's issue is currently omnipresent. So
Okay. We should probably at some point put an annotation in the toolset requirements file explaining that, I would think.
yeah, and we can also like create like singularity based stuff as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like the page already says you need Docker Compose 2.6 plus.
Okay, great. Well, but Docker Compose 2.6, if it says you need Docker Compose 2.6 plus, people would assume that 3.9 that includes 3.9, right?
Yeah, I think there's a confusion around that number 3.9
Yeah.
as well. I don't think that's the actual Docker Compose version. It's like the schema version or something.
Yeah, the schema version, YAML schema version.
Okay. Okay. Well, Travis, I mean, does anybody have any other questions? Or do we want to move on to kind of the next section, talking about interfacing with Jupyter? Okay. You ready to go, Travis?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so in this part of this tutorial, we're going to actually go over doing a bit of app development within OnDemand. So we're going to kind of step away from this for the moment. Don't need to worry about that. And we're going to come back to our system dashboard here. And what we're going to do is basically going to create the Jupyter application. And the way we're going to do this is by going into our sandbox and then going over to new app. And then we're going to clone an existing app. And the name we're going to use for it is Jupyter. And it's actually already here. So we're just going to grab it from this location. We're going to create a new Git project from this. And then we're going to submit. So you kind of read what this did, but by doing this, it copied that into our dev. So if you go back into our Files app, and you go into our OnDemand dev, we now have this Jupyter folder. And it's got all the pieces it needs to be an on-demand app for us to run. So we also need to do a little bit of configuration for this app. So if you would grab these commands so that we can set up basically our Git. And once that's done, we can start to get Jupyter working. So here's what we'll do first. The form.yaml is actually what we need to kind of work with. And so if you go to the folder for the app, you'll kind of see that form, which is really what is right here. That's what we want to work on. And one of the things to notice if you look at the form is that the cluster is empty. Okay, so they kind of try to call this out up there, but if you go into your interactive app sessions, number one, you now have this nifty little sandbox here, and that's the Jupyter app that we cloned. And if you go in there, and you try to launch this, it's going to fail. All right, and that's because it doesn't know what cluster it's going to. And so that's why we need to tell it what cluster, which we're going to use HPC in this example. Make sure to save it. Now let's reload the form. And we can delete this. Go back in here. Okay. So now let's try to launch this again. That's better, right? It did just give us an error right off the bat. And you see it's starting, something's going on, okay. But it's ultimately, let's see here, let's wait a little bit. Takes a moment. So the big thing to notice is this is kind of sitting here doing this is we've got this session ID. And that's going to take us to what we need next as soon as this doesn't work. So yeah, so it goes into completed. Like, hey, nothing happened. It did submit it, but it's like, you know, we didn't get a connection. So let's click this. And this takes us into basically the output of everything we can know about this job, specifically this output log. So if we go in and just say edit, we can view what's in here and pretty quickly see like the Jupyter command was not found. Okay, so it doesn't know how to actually launch this app. It's like, I know where to submit to, I don't know where the executable is. So we need to configure the path. And that's really the point of those output logs. So these output logs are very useful to kind of figure out what went wrong and to go back and kind of cobble together the mistakes and fix the scripts or the forms to get things to work correctly. So the big problem here is that this is using Python's virtual environment for the things that we're doing. And so we need to kind of enable some stuff and just sort of change some things around in the actual script. So there's this template script in the app. So we're not in the app here. Remember, this was that output from when the app didn't work. So we want to close that out. And this is actually in the app. This is the on-demand dev Jupyter, okay? And so within here, there's these templates. We want to go into the script. And we don't want to just view the script. I want to edit the script. So we want to edit. And we kind of call out what needs to happen right here. So from 24 to 31, we don't really have all the things that we need. Mainly, we're missing the activation. So we take this. Oops. We just changed it a little bit. Okay. And now remember to save. Let's go back over here. I'm going to delete that just so it's not around. Go in here and we're going to try to launch again. And again, this can take a moment to kind of see what happens. But the big thing is that now it works and we can connect, and we're in a Jupyter notebook and we can kind of do what we need to do in here. So great, we got a Jupyter notebook up and running, pretty standard. We just grabbed the app and kind of got going. I'm going to delete this for now because that was fun and all, but now let's see if we can kind of play a bit more with what's going on with this app and kind of customize it some. So we've deleted that. Now we kind of call out, it's probably a good spot again to save your work with Git. So I'm just going to copy that command, put it in here, save our work, and we can roll back if we need to, basically. But we're really going to start to dig into this form YAML. And that's what I had open already in one of the files tabs I have. So if you need to, just remember, I'm just in this Jupyter file or directory when I'm doing any of this. So within here, we've got these form attributes, okay? And the big thing to notice is that these BC are batch connect. That's what that's standing. That's what that prefix is saying. And there are special fields in on-demand that on-demand provides for convenience. And you can kind of, if you read the descriptions, you see why they exist, because it's just sort of like common things anybody submitting to these systems for these apps kind of need. So it's sort of like, how many hours do you want? What's the partition you're on? What's the account? How many cores do you need? Do you want an email when it starts? And because we're in this containerized environment, we can't really play with some of these things. So like the modules isn't something we really play with in these containers, but we use them extensively at OSC. So there's just things to be aware of, and there's more on the documentation there. But this is sort of a lot of the power of what you see on that form. So let's do a queue to select field. So we've got two partitions enabled in the Slurm containers, and we kind of saw that in the architecture that we've got these Slurm containers. So let's go down here, and we're going to create this custom queue attribute, okay? Because the big thing I want to point out is you can kind of, well, do that. But so let's go down to here, and I want to get rid of this guy here. And do and I need to define the attributes for that custom queue up here. And I'm just going to grab these. Okay. So again, we're kind of creating this custom queue because we need to submit things that we've set up, and we want to get rid of just this typical batch connect queue that we've had before. And so go back here. Right. Let's see my updates here. Huh. I don't know why I can't see those. Oh, I know what I'm at. And I forgot to save. I do that all the time on this. There we go. Okay, so assuming you remember to save once you've made your changes, now when we refresh that page, and again, it's a form, so it doesn't need to restart the pun. It's sort of like, nope, we can see these things here now. And this is just what's being presented to the user. So this isn't going to work yet. We need to actually kind of wire these things together. So to do that, we need to reconfigure the submit, because we've made these new fields and we kind of need to say what these fields actually do when we submit them. So if we go back to our file editor, we have this submit ERB. We can go in and we can edit this as well. And the big thing we want to do is under the script section down here, we want to basically add this custom queue for the queue name. So what I'm going to do is remove that. And then I'm going to copy and paste just to be safe here. Save that. And again, you'll notice that we're using ERB for a lot of this stuff so that we can kind of get access to some of the information we need to fill these forms out and these submits out as the job is sort of being submitted and run. And the key thing to kind of put together is like we're defining in the form what the user sees to select, and then the submit is sort of connecting that back to what the actual hardware and software need to know to take that and do a meaningful thing with it. So now, if you go back here, so let's refresh this. And let's do okay, yeah. So let's launch that again. Log into a shell. Actually, and run the ASCII command. And you can now see that compute partition. And then these are just kind of the complete files after all that's set up. So you can kind of see what it should look like without maybe some of the comments and whatnot. But so now let's limit the batch check number of slots. So like the SysLearn is configured with only 2 nodes total. If you were now to submit this app would say 3 to the batch check number of slots, it would say stay in the queue forever because SysLearn can't satisfy this. So what we want to do is make sure people can't do that. So we can set a max value on these things. So if we go back to that form YAML, and then from within here, you can go into the attributes again, and we're going to do the batch check num slots. And we're just going to set that max to 2. No, there we go. And that's it. If you go back into your app view to the form, there we go. You now see that you can't actually go over 2. So that prevents users from submitting things that just never work. And it makes it easy for the admin to kind of set that up as well. So now suppose you want to submit a script or have an app submit something, but you want to set native attributes using the script. So within the form.yaml, we can set quite a few things here to kind of be passed back. So here's a list of all the fields that we're going to be doing for this. Widget, max, min, step, value, label, help. And we go back there. So we're going to set some more stuff under the attributes here. And I hope that the connection here between the attributes and the form is kind of starting to become more obvious. So I describe this memory attribute with all of these pieces, and then I tell the form like, hey, there is the attribute here that you should have, and it has these things associated with it. So we need to, again, do something with the submit though for any of these to actually do something. So again, we go back over to our, let's save that, submit. And this is where we kind of use the native command. And there's a little sentence down here that calls out sort of how to interpret all this. You're really just like really passing this command to Slurm. I mean, that's why it's called native. You know, that's the idea. Is I'm feeding it these pieces to kind of run this stuff for me. So what we need to do here is and again, I'm using ERB here to get what I need to kind of set this. And you could see what would be rendered. And again, you can see sort of the pieces above to set some of these. Okay.
Travis, I'm gonna give you about the 5-minute or so warning.
Woo, okay, man.
I know, it applies when you're having fun.
Yeah, yeah.
For certain values of fun.
Yeah. So okay, so we've got that there, and we use the ERB to kind of set some of that, and yeah. So then I lost myself here. Yeah, I think that's one of the things I want to try to get at is like this sentence here. You can pass anything you want by sort of doing this. So that's the key thing I'm trying to show off and get at. And that was the sentence I was looking for. All right. All right. So now we've got all that set, and that's great. And let's save it. And now you can kind of go into a shell again. Make sure I'm on demand. I get my stuff right. Something. I don't know what happened there. I should have got an 800 there, but that's weird. Okay. Tabs. Okay. Well, well, I'm going to push past that because I don't know what I did there. Now I want to add a checkbox to the actual form here, which again is just something to do in the form YAML, which does a lot of the work for what we're presenting to people. And under the attributes, I want to add this Jupyter Lab switch. Okay, so Jupyter Lab and instead of notebooks, which is, you know, great. They're pretty similar. And I'm just trying to get through this to show this off real quick. But the idea again is you're just setting an attribute and then you're telling the form, hey, this is the attribute. And these are the things I'm sort of connecting to that attribute that you need to be aware of. So I feel like, Alan, I'm not out of time and I have quite a bit to do. So I kind of want to stop at this point to see if there's any questions we can at least take the last few minutes.
Yeah, I think that's fine. That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're kind of redoing the same thing we've done of just seeing how you can define these things. So I apologize that I ran out of time, but yeah. Is there any questions anybody has about how some of this worked, or like why we've done things the certain way we've done them, or any more questions around debugging?
Okay, why don't we flip over and hit the last slide or two, if you don't mind?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, just real quick, I mentioned at the beginning, we are funded by NSF. We've had 2 awards. Actually, we now have a 3rd one, which I should have added on here. And you know, we really appreciate our partnership with Virginia Tech and University of Buffalo. Next slide, which I think is the last one. Yeah, how to reach us. So you know, we don't turn to pumpkins in the next 60 seconds. We're here, we're available to help you out. We really prefer people post things on our discourse instance. So if you go again to openondemand.org, and there's some links to our discourse, how to get help. It's basically a message board, and it helps create a record, and other people answer stuff, not just us. We do have monthly tips and tricks webinars the first Thursday of the month. There's information on discourse about that and on the website, as well as monthly open office hours. And then I mentioned to submit a GitHub issue if you have issues. So with that, thank you so much for attending. Hopefully this was, you know, a little bit helpful and insightful, and give you some things to think about. And you know, we're happy to follow up offline if you have further questions. So thanks, Travis. You did a great job there.
Thanks, everybody.